Hey, what's up guys? It's me, LSP Spectrar here with another awesome video on Wayward Terran Frontier. This is the beginning of my series of designing ships tutorials. That's a really lame way to call it. So this is going to be the first one in the series. Kind of going an overview of the editor, not going into extreme detail on any particular point. Uh, This is your chance to tell me which ones you want to see first. If there's a particular part of the editing process of a ship that you want to see first, throw it down in the comments and I'll be sure to address those before I address the other ones. I will cover everything, so if you are watching this in the past, don't worry. Tutorials and everything are coming. You're still welcome to post in the comment section of what you want to see in particular. So let's get started. This is obviously the main menu of the game. You go down here, you select your profile. And you go to design ship. Now, an awesome thing that Wayward Terran Frontier has done, the developer on its website page, and I'll leave a link of this down below, he has left a zip file of some pre-designed ships. That just in case you're not quite understanding how to do this, you can kind of get a look at some of the ships, mess around with them, see how they kind of work. So this is one of those profiles. So let's take a look at it. As you see, everything's looking normal. In the editor, I'm going to kind of go over some of the features here. Over here, you've got info, integrity, inertia, crew, the total cost. Integrity and inertia, I'll go into more details into that in my structure video, but essentially it has to do with the structure of your ship. If you have more integrity, if you have less integrity than inertia, your ship has the chance to fall apart and just not work properly. So it's got to be at that level. Cost, obviously that's how much energy it's going to cost. And crew, pretty obvious how many crew members you're going to have on the ship. Over here you got mirror, which basically means if I have something, it's going to try to mirror it across. So if the vehicle is symmetrical, it can be very useful if you're building multiple things. So like down here, obviously these two sides look identical, and so it'd be easier to just do one half rather than both sides. I hope that makes sense. Power overlay tells you what's getting power and what's not, and if it's getting a sufficient amount of power, kind of a deal. If it's red, it's obviously not doing too great. Yellow is the actual power lines themselves. So yeah, blue is obviously what's giving out the power. Anyways, enough of that. Over here you have what you're selecting to build. So you have these different categories of all the things you can put in your ship. Now in this area of the editor, you're obviously going to have everything. There's no unlocking anything or anything like that. In the actual game where you edit a ship, you have to unlock those things via blueprints. So you may or may not have any of these things so far. It all just kind of depends on what you've found in the game. So this is kind of the area where you don't get to particularly use it in the game. It's more of an area to practice and test out cool ideas or totally ridiculous ideas. Doesn't really matter. So let's go over some of the basics of building a ship. Obviously, you got the outline. You pick your design, what you kind of want. You pick it based on what you kind of want the ship to be. If you want it to be a giant battle cruiser, you're obviously going to pick one of the larger ships in the profiles, and that's in here. What you do is you select a profile, new profile, and then you choose the whole based on what you want your ship to kind of be like. So obviously, if you're going for a bigger ship, you're going to pick a bigger ship because you want more weapons, more weapon options, more of them, essentially. You want more cargo space, whatever. You want room for one of those missile factories. Either way, let's get back into this design. Next, you need to be looking at things like structure, which is these items right here. The overall ship has a certain number of structure, but these add to the structure. Obviously, structure has to do with integrity and inertia. Talk about that more. You can find that over here in this tab. Don't forget to hit these arrows because sometimes you'll see more in the tab. I didn't see the first time I looked at it. I was like, man, I think there's missing a whole bunch of things, and I looked down and I saw the arrows. Maybe you're a lot smarter than me and you already saw those. Anyways, integrity. Next, you want to think about movement. So you've got engines, which are down here. You obviously got your main forward engines, and then you've got your thrusters that allow you to turn and rotate your ship. Obviously, you want to put them in points where they're going to be most effective. Typically, you put them at the ends of the ship, so like at the front end and then the back end. You typically don't worry too much about the middle because that's not really going to help you turn a whole lot. You can, there's nothing against it, so go ahead if you want. Next, you got life support. You may or may not know it, but your ship does have life support. If you don't have life support, you're going to run out of oxygen and your guy is going to die. So you can have just really the amount of life support you want is based on the size of your ship. Now you technically can have one life support for an enormous ship, but as soon as you start losing oxygen, it's going to be really hard to replace that. So let's say I'm fighting in the ship and I have a hull breach in the side, and I suddenly get I lose oxygen. Oxygen is sucked out. You've seen that, it turns red. You obviously go in there and you start dying. The rate at which that resupplies with air is based on how much life support you have. So this is a life support. I believe they are right here, life support. So you've got a whole bunch of in-floor ones. You got just a regular one based on your needs. This one's obviously in the ground in the hallway. Sometimes they have more. So it all kind of depends on how much room you have in your ship and how fast you want those areas to resupply with air. Next, you got the bridge, how you control your ship. You got this bridge right here. There are multiple kinds of bridges, oops, past it, based on how big your ship is, what your needs are, and what you want. Sometimes you just want to have a really cool big bridge to look really cool, so go for it. Sometimes you just need a really small one because you really don't care. It all just kind of depends. There's no real big, I guess there is a little bit of a difference with the view range, but really there's not really a big deal between them at the moment. That may change. So yeah. Next, you've got things like power. Obviously, you're going to need power in your ship. You've got your power generators and your power lines. So if we go to the power tab right here, you've got your conduits and your reactors. You got your radiators, capacitors. Those are all important, and I'll promise I'll go into much greater detail in a future video about this. Awesome for you though, in the old game, when you looked over it, it didn't give you all this information, useful information that it does in this tab now. So you might be able to figure it out on your own, but don't worry, I am going to talk about it because it can still be a little bit confusing. Essentially, you need the power generators, and you need certain ones for different purposes, depending on how much power you're using. Capacitors, in case you didn't know, they store energy, and so they can be used at a different time, essentially. And I'll talk more about the usefulness for those. You got your conduits, which are essentially your wiring. You've got a single one, and you got the long ones that can go under hallways, so you can walk over them. Wider one for hallways. And that's basically what these yellow things are. And yellow means power's running through it, in case you didn't know. If it's not yellow, it means power's not running through it. All of them are going to be yellow in the editor, so it's not until you test your ship that you can do that. And I'll tell you how you can test your ship at the end of this video. Next, you've got things like weapons. You obviously need a weapon in a ship. So you got these turret mounts. Let's go to weapons. You got different sizes of turret mounts. You got stationary ones. Another thing of weapons, in case you haven't seen this, I'm sure you have, you got missiles that can be added to the ship. And so it's kind of a big deal unless you're just doing a cargo ship to have something like this. And the last kind of really important thing is a bed. You need at least one bed for yourself, and then you need a bed for additional crewmates. Now, please don't 100% quote me on that, because that's how it was in the old game before Zero Falls came out, and as far as I know, that has not changed. I'll be able to tell you for absolutely sure when I talk more about that extra stuff in ships, like beds and stuff like that, in a future video. But as far as I know, and as far as I've tested, and I have tested, don't worry, you need a bed for yourself and then a bed for each additional crew member. Other than that, other things are kind of optional and up to your discretion. As you're building your ship, you need to keep those things in mind. The biggest one that I find the hardest to remember is structure. You always need to leave room for some structure in order to get this to work. I've talked about it a lot. I might as well do a little brief summary, and I'll go into more detail about it in my video. Essentially, your integrity right here needs to be higher than your inertia. I don't know if I already said that. Sorry. But that's essentially what I'm talking about, and the structure adds to it. So you need to leave room to add some in, and obviously you can see here you can add it in between things. So don't get too anxious, but be sure to think about that. Another big thing that you need to think about, and I had the hardest time with this when I was first building ships in the old game, was that you need to think about how you're going to repair stuff. So obviously this ship, you can see you have some pretty good reach to repair a lot of things up front, but you don't have a lot of reach to repair things in back. Now that is going to hurt you, but if that's not your focus and that's not your intent, then don't worry about it. If you don't plan on allowing them to hit your back very easily and you're hoping to defend it and you want your aura to just worry about it, you don't want to worry about it, go ahead. But obviously it's very useful to have a pathway to come down here so you can at least reach your engines, things like that. So be thinking about that. Obviously with this here you can reach some of these things, but not a lot. So again, that is such a big part of designing a ship. You need to think about how you're going to repair it, unless you really just don't care at all. And in that case, don't worry about it. Stuff as much as you want in, have 0 hallways. Doesn't matter. Another thing to think about is armor. Obviously, you can see this one has quite a bit of armor. But essentially, the thought process I go through when I'm designing a ship is I think about structure, what I want in the ship, how many turrets can I fit, can I reach the parts, and can I move adequately? And then I think, do I have enough power to support everything I want? And from there, I start to add things in. I add storage space as I can. If you want the mining missile, obviously this is probably some kind of mining attack ship of some sort, then you can add that in. But you gotta really think about those basics first. That way you can get all those things in, and then you have room for this stuff rather than the other way around. I hope you found this thing useful. As I said again, this is really just basic overview of this editor, and I want to go into more detail, and I promise I will with the upcoming videos. And I'm going to talk real topic specific, and at the end, my very last tutorial, I'm going to build a ship with you guys. I'm going to start from the basics and go all the way down. Unless enough of you request that to happen first, then I will do that video first where I build one with you. Other than that, please in the comment section below, if you have a part of this editor that you want to see first that you're confused about, let me know. I am going to do it all, but I'd love to get the ones that you guys want to see first. I want to get those ones out so you guys can start doing this sooner than later, rather than having to wait weeks and weeks and weeks to get to the video that you finally want. Other than that, if you have any other suggestions you want to throw at me, videos you want to see, stuff you want to see me do, or whatever, maybe another game, just throw that in the comment section. I'd much appreciate it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.